Okay, so big welcome to the new podcast, which is going to be interviewing lots of people in the entertainment world. We're taking me, Tina Calder, back to my roots as a showbiz and entertainment reporter. And thanks to the lovely Robin, who's with me at the moment, Robin Elliott, who didn't even say hello, knowing that this is on podcast. Give me a hello.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, or whatever time you're listening to this thing at.
Yeah, so we're here with author Anna Gray, and we're going to be talking about her new book that is now released. Anna, tell me a little bit about how you came to be an author. Is this your first book?
Hi Tina, yes it is. It's my very first book, and I decided that I wanted to write a book because I felt that I had been through quite a lot of difficult experiences in my life that were to do with mental health and things that had developed out of that, and I wanted to share my experiences for anyone who might be experiencing something similar, and that what I would write would be able to help them.
And when you made that decision to finally put into words what was going on, was that easy or hard for you? Was it a cathartic process?
There were many different challenging aspects to it. It was really scary because I wanted to share stuff about my own life in the past, and I felt, okay, so that's a really big, scary thing to do because you're sharing personal details and difficult times that you've had, and it is quite a daunting thing to do because you don't know how well it's going to be received or, you know, what way people are going to react. But I just felt that it was really important to help to lessen any stigma around talking about your own mental health stuff, and I thought that it would be a really beneficial thing to do for myself and for anyone that would reach out to help. So it was a really cathartic experience for me, you know, it really did help me in terms of putting pieces of my life together. Not that I hadn't worked on that a lot already myself, but it really was like the final layer of the onion to come peeling off, so to speak. Yeah.
Okay. And when you decided to look at which elements that you wanted to include in the book, was that an easy, you know, did you already know, well, I want to talk about this, this and this, or did the book develop itself almost?
No, I think I already knew before I started the layout of it and how I wanted it to be. I sort of had an idea of, you know, all the things, and I can't possibly include every aspect of my life and everything that's happened. It would take far too long, but I knew there were significant, important parts that I wanted to include, so I had a very good idea about that and a fantastic publisher to help.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say was the hardest part of the book?
The hardest part of writing it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good question. The hardest part? I think the hardest part for me was actually knowing that it would be read.
I get what you mean. I know.
As funny as that sounds,
I understand what you mean.
As funny as that sounds, I mean, it was difficult enough to sort of sit down and write it all down and think, oh wow, you know, that's my life, sort of in a book. And actually, it wasn't until nearly the end that it really dawned on me that other people were going to have to read it.
Yeah.
So there were different things that came into play there. There was a different emotion came up when I thought about my family reading it and my friends reading it than people who maybe don't know me at all, and it was very different emotions came up around that, different fears.
Was that an easy process, that sort of realisation that okay, I've got this book, I want to now get people to read it, but the process of then handing it off to certain people, you know, was there one person in particular that kind of read it as you went along, or was there one person that was the first reader, you know?
No, I didn't let anybody read it as I went along.
Okay.
Not in any sort of great detail anyway. I did do some Facebook Live videos each week with each chapter that I was writing, because I wanted to share a little bit about what I was writing, so people knew what I was going to be writing about, but I didn't actually let people read until it was completely finalised. So I guess, you know, the interesting part was that when it was actually completely finished, and the only person who had read it at that stage was me and the publisher, the first person after that to read it was my sister. And I really wanted her opinion first. Because
what was the emotion around giving it to your sister?
In a way, it was,
nerves,
in a way, that was nearly like handing over a newborn baby, because from start to finish, it took 9 months to create. So it actually felt like making a baby in a way, something growing inside, and you're creating something, and then you're going to hand it over to somebody else, So there was anxiety, but there was also a sense of completion and a sense of gratitude for the time that she took to read it and the good feedback that she gave me. So I guess it was more I wanted her opinion on, because she knows me so well inside out, and she knows about everything. She already knew about things that were in it, and I guess I wanted to make sure that it came across in the way that she would know I would want to be represented.
Yeah. And in terms of the content, what would you say will probably stand out the most for people who are reading it?
I would hope what would stand out the most would be that when a person suffers with a mental health issue and goes through different experiences or escape mechanisms to try to deal with that when they reach out and ask for help and go for counselling, as I did, and I then went on to become a trained counsellor myself, I would hope that what stands out the most is that change and transformation are possible, and that there's hope, and that there's support, and that it's possible to hit rock bottom and then come up the other side of it. So I really wanted it to offer, I wanted it to be used as an example of offering hope.
And when you described rock bottom, just to give the listeners an idea, what did that mean for you? What was rock bottom for you?
Rock bottom for me was, the story really starts whenever I was about 7 years old, and there was a lot of bullying happening in school, and that was really what damaged my own self-esteem and sense of self-worth, and affected many years to come after that, because there was no social media in those days. There wasn't the awareness out there about speaking out whenever you were being bullied, so it was quite easy for me to internalise it.
What kind of bullying would it have been?
What do you mean?
In terms of what were the other young people doing that made you feel bullied?
So it would have started off as being isolated from friend groups, and then name calling and tricks being played. There was a little bit of sort of hitting and kicking and that type of a thing, but it was mostly a sense of being degraded all the time, and being shown, you're not part of this, you're not one of us, and there's something wrong with you.
So they were chipping away at that self-esteem that whole time.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, after that, I sort of account for the years after that where, because I hadn't really spoken out an awful lot about it, the escape mechanisms that I turned to try to cope with how I was feeling inside, and started drinking a lot and self-harming, and there's a thing called trichotillomania, and I'm not sure if many people have heard of it, but it's where you quite literally start to pull your hair out.
Yeah.
And was in a relationship that turned, quite difficult in terms of it was domestically violent. And then, I moved over to Scotland and started working in a part-time job, and thought I was going to really just change my life around, and it didn't happen because I carried all my problems with me inside, and I felt I had nothing left to offer the world. I didn't have any qualifications really at that stage, not very many, and didn't know what to do with myself, and I sort of found myself in a bit of a fight for survival. So I ended up working in a lap dancing bar and as a phone sex operator, and for me that was the lowest point. That was the time
where were you?
That was in Scotland. Yeah. So for me that was the lowest point, but it was the turnaround point when a lady phoned by mistake. She wanted to actually ring a tarot line, and the company that I worked for actually directed calls to both tarot lines and phone sex lines, and for whatever reason she had been redirected to me by mistake, and we ended up just talking on the phone for an hour, and at the end of it she told me how much it had helped her just having somebody listen to her, to listen to her problems, and for somebody to have empathy and compassion for. And it was that moment for me that the penny dropped, and I realised, okay, I might not have the qualifications yet, I might not have, the backing behind me that I want, but what I do have is the experience and the empathy.
Yeah.
So that was the moment I decided I'm going to go and study to become a counsellor once I have really worked on myself more and went through counselling myself and get myself into a really good place. I want to use my experiences to sort of turn the lead into gold, I suppose, to use my experience to help other people. So that's what I did.
And when you were, would you say that you were on a bit of a self-destructive path at that point?
I was, yeah. That's exactly the way I would put it. Up to that point, I guess I was. I felt so much pain inside, and so just as if there was fundamentally something wrong with me, and there was still a big stigma at that time around coming out and saying that you weren't okay. So I think when I look back on it now, it feels like I didn't really want to self-destruct, but I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
The world felt too difficult or too painful, and I didn't really know how I was going to get out of the mess that I got myself into.
Would you say that the route that you took into the lap dancing club, into the phone sex line, was that giving you fake or false sense of self-assurance and confidence? That was masking what wasn't there? Yeah,
there was a few different reasons and elements with that. The first one being that Edinburgh, where I lived, was very expensive to live in. I didn't have good qualifications, so my job was sort of minimum wage thing, and I just couldn't make ends meet. So it felt a little bit like I don't want to go home to Belfast with my tail between my legs to say that I can't make any money, to survive or even pay my rent. So part of it was a financial thing, out of desperation and a sort of fight for survival to stay there. Another part of it was that I was actually, to be honest, a wee bit curious about it.
Yeah.
I'd always been a bit curious. I thought I'd seen it on the TV and thought that looks really glamorous, which it's not in real life, by the way.
Yeah.
But there was a sort of a draw to it, to sort of, what's this all about? Is this really going to make me feel like like a glamorous, attractive, wanted person and tap into some sort of, sexuality buzz thing, which I think floated in and out on the first evening that I tried it, but certainly was not the dominant feeling. What came quite quickly into it was a sense of, yes, I made the decision to do it, but actually I don't really want to do it, and I felt like I was completely selling out and selling a part of myself.
So almost life coerced you into it, in some way, shape or form.
Yeah. I know it. Look, it was me who made the decision to do it, but I think at that point I was so down on myself and so low that it's all I felt I had left to do or to offer, which wasn't true.
How easy or hard was it to vocalise how you felt at the time in the book?
Incredibly difficult, Tina. Really, really tough, because bearing in mind it's after that period of time I did quite a number of years of my own personal counselling and journeys and things to really do a lot of healing for myself, but it was still difficult to put it into words because number one, I was reliving it for a short space of time, which is fine because I'm not back there in the depths of it or anything, but it was more kind of, I actually felt as if I was looking back on a young person who I didn't really know that well and really felt sorry for. There was a sadness where I thought, God, that's really sad that I felt like that. But also came then obviously the scary part about sharing something like that, which
were there people in your life that didn't know that you had been through that?
Oh yes.
Okay, so there was that then, that knowing that once this book came out, boom, everybody would know.
Yeah, that was, you see, I did really have a choice. It was my choice what to include or not to include, and I wasn't told by the publisher that I had to or that I didn't have to. He left it up to me and he said, look, this is up to you, but you're not wanting to share it in a seedy way. You're not making it into something to try and... You're not using it as a selling point. You're not using it in a seedy way to sort of draw people into your book. You're using it to express in detail how difficult something like that can be and to show what you've learned from it. He says it's not going to be easy. You know, you might get some people who sort of joke about it or make, you know, try